Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about empathy. You may have heard that empathy is a skill that enables you to be able to put yourself in the shoes of someone else so that you understand how they're feeling. It's actually more than that. It's actually feeling the feelings of someone else if you possess it naturally. However, to function in this world, you don't need to naturally possess truckloads of empathy. In fact, you probably are a little bit better off if you don't, because you might have more regard for yourself in that case. I say that as an empath. I'm an INFJ, and I have a natural tendency to empathize with other people, and to the extent that when I walk into a room, I can feel the energy of everyone. I can feel the feelings and know the vibe of a person, maybe even more than they know themselves. Um, and that's not always very comfortable for people if they realize that about you. So you need to keep it in check. And the disadvantage of being an empath is that you tend to be more compassionate towards other people than towards yourself. And this has taken me almost a lifetime to discover. That's why it was a real revelation for me to actually discover my personality type and to discover where my self-criticism was coming from. And that's the dark side of empathy. On the other hand, empathy is a superpower, but it needs to be channeled correctly, because not everyone even possesses empathy, but it is possible to develop the skill of empathy. And that's why when we do courses on emotional intelligence, we help people or give them guidelines about how to develop empathy. And in the development of empathy, it could be used for good or it could be used for evil, because I've spoken about the dark triad traits before, which is they're the sociopaths, the psychopaths, the narcissists, the Machiavellian people that they will actually, they possess absolutely zero or a very, very low quantity of natural empathy, but they will mirror people and find out about people so that they can manipulate them and for their own gain, and people are very much taken in by them, because when you don't possess natural empathy, you can naturally not really even care about what people think. You just carry on, or okay, some of them do care about what they think, like the narcissistic people, um, but the thing is that when you don't possess empathy, it's easy to move on. Whereas when you do actually possess natural empathy, you it kind of gets in the way sometimes. So you need to be gentle with yourself in that case, or need to be empathic with yourself, yes, and develop self-acceptance. And that is where your empathy will really work for you if you are an empath. And if you one of those evil people, well, you know, you probably will not relate to this video at all, and probably try and figure out how you're going to manipulate me because I'm an empath. But that's okay, because I've got a lot of education about that now. I've been studying it for the past year and a half at least, to overcome the manipulation which I have been subject to because of my empathy. But having said that, there is actually a way to develop empathy a skill of empathy, if you don't possess it in very big quantities, but you possess maybe a normal amount of empathy, um, you can develop the skill, and it is actually by imagining what actually listening, empathic listening is the way that you would, let's say you're a salesperson or you're trying to sell something, which we, most of us do in business, we're trying to sell something or another. So you want to know where your client is coming from and where your prospects are coming from, and are you wasting your time with trying to sell whatever you're selling to a certain person? What do they want? And how do you cater for their needs? So in that case, it's a very good skill to develop, um, because if you're really caring about your client and what you and being of service to them. So listening, let's take listening a bit further. We spoke about it in communication. So empathic listening is really hearing what the person has to say instead of thinking what you're going to say next. And you can get a lot through empathic listening. You can gain a lot of knowledge about a particular person or client, and the person will appreciate you if they feel that you're sincere, and they know that you're sincere in really helping them to fulfill whatever needs that they want, because you're hearing them out. And that's where good salespeople come in. But on the other hand, you get the manipulator. So with those of us who are discerning, we need to know the difference between a person who is uh, doing it for their own gain, or a person who is doing it to help you. And if you're discerning, you'll know the difference. Okay, so empathy, as you can see, it's a double-edged sword, or even more than a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, it's a very good skill to develop, but on the other hand, we think of people who mirror us and are really creepy and are, they know a lot about us, and then they use that to uh, to our disadvantage. They use it to destroy us in some cases. So when we open up to people, we need to also be discerning about that, because people can pretend that they're empathic and hear you out and everything, but they're just gathering information about you. And so on the side of the listening and the side of the listener, there needs to be a bit of a two-way exchange, more than just one person listening. Um, Although some people like to be listened to, just be careful who you're talking to as well. Um, yeah, and as an empath, okay, uh, did I say it's a superpower? Yes, it is actually a superpower, but there's a huge, uh, okay, let's say there's a caveat to that, whatever that means. Yeah, because, you know, um, oh, I don't know. This empathy is quite a difficult topic for me, because I realize that all my life it's my empathy which has got in my way, because I didn't know how to use it to its full advantage, and I did not even realize I was an empath for that, to that extent. I didn't realize that. I thought I was sensitive, but often it is the sensitive people who are overly empathic. I mean, I don't know if you can even be overly empathic. You just need to channel it correctly, because it really is something which is a great advantage, and can be an advantage in a profession like teaching. Like my daughter's an ISFJ, which is it's a more common type than an INFJ, because at least they might have their feet more firmly on the ground than us intuitive types. But we also need to, talking about that, we all need to be realistic. So when I say she's an ISFJ, she relates very well to the children, but the other teachers don't always like that because they see that she has a way with the children that they don't, because they don't have the natural empathy. But if you take good stock of what your strengths and weaknesses are, they might have other strengths, and those the strengths of emotional intelligence you can actually develop. So empathy is it's a skill of emotional intelligence, and that's why it's part of this course. It's not something that some of us possess and others can't possess. Unless, of course, you have those difficult dark triad personality types where you don't possess natural empathy, but even they can maybe uh, develop some sort of a semblance so that people think they have empathy, which uh, is not ideal, but that's to show that it is something that can be developed. And it's very much the intention behind it which matters, and also being sensitive to other people, because if I try to fix everyone who doesn't want to be fixed, then I'm not being sensitive to other people either. I'm not thinking about their needs and what they might prefer or what they might not like about me, and I'm not really helping them unless they want to be helped. So you really need to meet the person where they're at as far as empathy goes, and also look after your own self and your well-being, and respect yourself, and be empathic towards yourself. If you're an empath who possesses it in great quantities, you tend to take the other person's side when they might be, that you probably in a lot of cases deserve it more than they do. So um, yeah, it's very much a skill that needs to be handled with care, or an attribute that needs to be handled with care. Um, what else can I say about empathy? I don't know. um, it's okay. So I've said it's a skill, it's a superpower, but it can also be an Achilles heel, because, um, but if you realize that you have it in huge doses, that's really, it's a big realization, and it's a huge advantage for you once you know that. So I would recommend that earlier on in life you discover, you know who you are. You actually, what helped me was actually doing the Myers-Briggs. I don't want to get into the Myers-Briggs now, but actually discovering, going a bit deeper into it, not saying, okay, I'm an INFJ, and I'm introverted, intuitive, feeling, judging, and leaving it at that. I actually listened to a YouTuber called Frank James, and he explained about the cognitive functions, and that was a real eye opener to me, because the cognitive functions are where you know the order of your attributes. Okay, and I know that it's offered by introverted intuition that gets in the way, because that's my primary function. And if you intuitive above practical, you can also get yourself in big trouble. And if you combine that with your natural empathy, you look like a person who no one can relate, relate to, unless there are other people that are like you. But then we all have the attributes in different quantities. So it's not to box you; it's actually to for you to realize what makes up who you are, and why some people tend to be avoidant of you, why some people are totally horrible to you, because they were to me, and I didn't realize that. I just reflect that when I walk into a room, why sit next to a person and they just don't get on with me. It's that I'm threatening something deep inside them, and it's something they have to work on. It's not really me, it's what I possess, which is my empathy. And in that way, empathy, if you're an empath, and you can use it for evil if you that way inclined, because once you realize the power of it, and that you can read people so well. But the problem is that we can't read ourselves, so it's not it's not really sometimes it's not really an advantage sometimes, because we are so horrible to ourselves if other people are horrible to us. So the thing is that you just need to balance it. You need to balance it, and you need to know yourself and accept yourself and be on your own side. That's the main thing, is to be on your own side if you're an empath. But if you're a person who is has the normal amount of empathy and wants to develop more, you can do very well in your chosen career if you work on that skill. And that's what I'm talking about, is EQ, really, emotional intelligence. But also, when you have emotional intelligence, it needs to be balanced between you, which is the intrapersonal, and other people, which is the interpersonal. And you need to be a good communicator, but you also need to have the self-awareness to uh, to have it, for that star to shine completely. I know this has been quite a serious thing, and quite a quite. I've actually said it in quite a, maybe a sort of a self-reflective way, but this has been quite a big thing for me. And maybe if you're an empath, you might relate, or if you're not an empath, you might maybe empathize a bit with us who are empaths, who actually just have that thing where we can feel other people's feelings too much. So, and when you see one of us walk into a room and maybe see what you don't want to show us, maybe you can understand where that's coming from. Um, so that's about empathy. But if you do an EQ course, you will, or a course in emotional intelligence, uh, there are ways that you can develop empathy, and one of them is, the main one is by listening to other people, actually really listening to what they have to say. Because if you don't listen to other people and you're always thinking about what you're going to say next, well, you won't really develop any empathy. But it's a skill, and skills take work to develop. So if you don't naturally have the ability to listen, and you prefer to talk and talk and talk and talk about yourself, you'll never really learn anything about other people, and you'll never really, um, you won't, maybe in your relationships you won't do too well, because people like to be listened to, and communication is a two-way street to get back to communication. All right, so I think that's what I have to say about empathy. But there's quite a bit to it, and a lot of various areas that I could go into empathy. But as far as learning the skill goes, be assured that it is learnable, but your intentions need to be good about as to how you're going to apply it and use it. And thank you for listening, and I'll chat to you next time. Good night.